World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better, because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. Now, Brewmasters were the very last spec that I went over while I was assembling upgrades. They're not the very last spec I reviewed after making my first draft, but the last of the first drafts was Brewmasters, and looking back on my first draft, and in fact on the whole first iteration, I really struggled with cooking up upgrades for tanks in general. I mean, I know upgrading active mitigation abilities for a tank would be the kind of thing that'd get tank players excited, but there are a lot of wrong things that could be done while upgrading those. Making them overpowered or must-haves are 2 of the dangers, but another danger is not understanding how they work and making them worse than they were before with the quote-unquote upgrades. I don't want to fall into either one of those pitfalls. But with player feedback, I believe I can get something good in the upgrade spread. Seriously, I know the people watching this video are going to know more than I do about the spec whose design I'm tinkering with. So why tinker? Why put my ignorance on display for everyone to see? Well, partly it's because I hope it'll be funny. Mostly it's because once I get feedback and proper explanations, I can get something good, something that'll get players excited to see. And when Blizzard sees what can get players excited, they'll know what they can add to the game to get the players to come back. I mean, with all the shakeups at Blizzard, things are gonna change. They can't not change. And I'm talking about changes in the workplace and in the game itself. So let's give them something good that they can start with, all while poking fun of my on-display ignorance. With that out of the way, let's look at what I came up with the first iteration for Brewmasters. First, we have Brew Haze, an upgrade for Keg Smash. It's an AoE around you that does not require you to target a specific enemy. It's got the same cooldown, little higher energy cost, and it does more damage. It still triggers Shuffle, and it still reduces brew cooldowns by slightly more than Keg Smash does. The next one is Jab, an upgrade for Tiger Palm. It deals slightly more damage, but it no longer reduces the cooldown of your brews. Instead, it reduces the cooldown of Expel Harm and Keg Smash or Brew Haze, and it also increases the chance to dodge granted by your mastery as if you had been victim of an auto attack. The third upgrade is Chi Explosion, an upgrade for Spinning Crane Kick that deals damage instantly and that heals nearby allies, including yourself. It's got no cooldown, but it does have a fairly high energy cost. The fourth upgrade is Boon of Yulan, which upgrades Expel Harm. It heals for a larger amount. If you happen to have a Soothing Mists target, like that's going to happen, but if you do, it'll heal them. If not, it'll heal you. It causes an effigy of Yulan's head to appear above you and breathe out nature damage in a cone in front of you based on the amount healed. It has a longer cooldown than Expel Harm. Next we have Flame Spittoon, an upgrade for Breath of Fire that deals additional damage to the primary target, does not deal splash damage directly to nearby enemies, has a longer range, but it still ignites all nearby targets that have Brew Haze or Keg Smash active on them. And yes, this one costs energy. Next we have Mist Mend, an upgrade to Vivify that is instant cast, has a 15-second cooldown, and reduces the cooldown of your brews when you use it. Finally, we have Guard, an upgrade to Celestial Brew. Guard has half the cooldown that Celestial Brew has, and it doesn't create as large of a shield, but the shield is improved by Purifying Brew's Stagger Clear. Now we get to the thinking. I wanted to pick from abilities in the normal Brewmaster rotation, because of course I do. For once, I decided not to upgrade a ranged damage ability with no cooldown, since it wasn't in the rotation and didn't really need to be. I will put Chi Bolt in with the instant cast proc caveat if I'm told that's better than the other stuff that I have, but some part of me says that's not very likely. I was going to upgrade Keg Smash to its original name of Drunken Haze, but I decided the name Brew Haze was a little more, well, G-rated. I made it melee and AoE and gave it a bit more damage and energy costs, and that's really about it. I wanted to see if I could give Jab a different purpose, so I changed which abilities it decreases the cooldown of. And if that was the wrong trade-off, please do let me know. Again, I know I'm going to make some mistakes with this, but I don't know which moves I've made were mistakes until someone tells me. Chi Explosion doesn't have much nuance to it. Self-healing, instant AoE damage instead of channeled. Of course, Boon of Yu'lon is better than both of those, but Boon of Yu'lon has a cooldown. Chi Explosion does not. Though I should say that Chi Explosion was once an upgrade for Blackout Kick instead of for Spinning Crane Kick. If players tell me to shift what it's upgrading, then I will. Boon of Yu'lon started out as Expulse Harm. It was going to be more healing and more damage, but then when I went to look for an icon for it, I found an unused, beautiful icon of Yu'lon breathing out mist, and it was just too cool not to use. So I turned it into a frontal cone, and I figure it'll look a lot like what Dragon Breath or Demonic Breath used to look like. Adding flashy stuff like that is a big part of why I'm trying to invent the upgrade system in the first place. Though I have to admit that sometimes the thing that inspires me is the icons that I see available. Flame Spittoon is another ranged damage ability, but it also trades some multi-target damage for some single-target damage. I figure that is, or can be, a worthwhile trade-off. Mistmend is different for Brewmasters from what it was for Mistweavers. It's meant to be another self-healing option that's viable as a tank, though not as spectacular visually as Boon of Yu'lon. Fun little fact. For a long time I was calling Effuse Mistmend until I saw the Prune Diffuse ability and couldn't resist using that name. Anyhow, now that I look at this, there's about 3 different self-heals I've buffed or created with these upgrades. If that's too much, I'll cut it down. An important thing to keep in mind, of course, is that only 3 of these upgrade abilities can be equipped at a time, so the odds of all 3 being equipped at the same time seems a little low, so maybe it isn't too much. I don't know. Feedback, as always, would be very much appreciated. Finally, Guard is an older monk tanking ability. I picked the trade-off of having a shorter cooldown for a smaller shield. If that's not a good trade-off to have, you know the drill. As for what's in my back pocket, things I had considered listing in the 7 upgrades but chose not to, I've got this. Elusive Brew, an upgrade for Fortifying Brew. It reduces all damage taken by 30%, has a much shorter cooldown, does not increase your maximum health or self-healing directly, nor does it increase Stagger's effectiveness. I had thought of taking Fortifying Brew and making it a shorter cooldown that just reduces damage taken, kind of like Divine Protection or Survival Instincts. I will still do that if players tell me that's a better idea than one of the things that I have above in the 7 upgrades in the main spread. I am expecting to make mistakes and to need to iterate on these upgrade concepts. It's all part of the chore. Heck, I asked a lot of specific questions while I was explaining the thinking, but I know there's a real possibility that I was thinking along completely the wrong lines, and the questions I should have been asking were nothing like the questions I actually was asking. If that's the case, well, let me know what I should have been thinking and what I should have been asking. Keep the feedback coming. At least I'm listening to it. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. So, now the question comes up, how did I do when I measure the spread by which upgrades a player with a goal can pick? Well, shoot, should I even be asking about doing damage to multiple targets for tanks? Well, maybe. I mean, there's Boon of Yulan, Chi Explosion, and Brew Haze, so that's something at least. As for single target, Flame Spittoon and Jab count. I suppose a Brewmaster would need to take a multi-target upgrade next to buff their single target damage, but they could, so... I really worry I'm not even on the right track of thinking with this retrospective evaluation. Let's try survivability. Guard allows for more frequent but less powerful damage mitigation, which could be useful. Probably it would be helpful over the long haul, since it wouldn't help with really high spikes of damage. Or would it? I mean, it would mitigate part of those spikes, and that's better than nothing. Should I have reversed the trade-off and made Guard provide a bigger shield with a longer cooldown? Mistmend and Boon of Yulan are pretty good for self-healing, but I'm not sure self-healing is the best way for a Brewmaster to deal with damage. I mean, what's it do for stagger damage? Should I have modified the self-heal so a part of them reduces the bank of stagger damage instead of directly applying to the monk's health? I sure hope feedback can set me on the right track of thinking. I mean, I looked at the abilities and talents on Wowhead, I looked at the rotations on Icy Veins, and, well, it is possible to do all that research and still miss some nuances. Some part of me is saying, why are you doing this? Why are you sitting at your desk at 2:30 in the morning, typing a script for a video where you put your own ignorance on display when you're supposed to log into work at 8 in the morning? Why are you making these videos in the first place, spending weeks on this project when you know half the time you're just putting your own ignorance on display and making a fool of yourself? You don't know how to upgrade all 36 specs in the game. And I don't. But the players do. And someone needs to get this info. Someone needs to show Blizzard how to get players excited about getting back into WoW. If I don't do this, who will? I went into this project knowing that there was a lot that I didn't know, and that people who actually play the specs and classes that I'm cooking up upgrades for would know a lot better than I what the best ways are to make the upgrades. That's why I plan to iterate based on feedback, and I hope, oh so much, that there is something in here that shows promise. Whether it's the basic concept, the way some specific upgrades work or can work with the right tweaks, or some upgrade that you've thought of that's way better than anything I have in this spread. I hope something has gotten you excited, because I want players to get excited, to get back into the new World of Warcraft, whatever that new World of Warcraft is going to be. And whatever your feedback is, thank you in advance for helping me make a much better informed and better all-around Iteration 2, because I very much want to make one. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in-depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change in action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.